So let's maybe talk a little bit about the tax system and why it's, it's really it's distorted. So I like to tell people that um, there's value in it being unclear for people who know are insiders, right? So insiders benefit from ambiguous or complicated rules, and that can be incumbents, that can be firms for regulation. It's also true for people who understand tax law and accounting and so forth. They benefit from the complexity. But let's kind of think through from an actual welfare standpoint. What does the tax system reward and punish, and how do different groups of people make out? So I was going to say initially, our tax system is actually pretty regressive in terms of poor people pay more, but I need to caveat that because really poor people benefit tremendously from our tax code, right? Really poor people pay basically no taxes and receive huge amounts of benefits. So Phil Graham wrote a book about this, The Myth of Inequality, of just saying, if you look at the say bottom 5 to 10% of people in the country, they're net recipients of tens of thousands of dollars of tax revenue, basically through benefits and programs. So it's not highly regressive at the very bottom, though there's other issues with that kind of welfare trap we can talk about. But they take far more from the system than they pay into it by a lot. But then after you move out of that and you're working basically, so that's like a lot of people are like not really even working. Once you move out of that, so I don't know, let's say $40,000 a year up through, I mean, I don't know what the level is, but let's say $100,000 a year, those folks pay relatively little income tax generally, but they pay very high payroll taxes, right? That this payroll tax, and not just them paying it, the employer pays a part of it, so the burden is actually greater than what's taken out of our paycheck. And then you have, let's say, the 100,000 to 2 million income earner area. And these folks pay, as we talked about, like the lion's share. I mean, they're paying a high percentage on a high amount of income, and they don't, like, deductions don't really cut a lot of that out. Does that sound how you would describe the tax system? How would you think about the sort of the burden, the way the tax system is developed in terms of, is everybody paying or some people paying? But that's how I kind of think about it. At the very bottom are net recipients of a lot, and then the payroll is very burdensome for under 100,000, and then income tax is very burdensome for incomes over 100,000.
Well, I think to your point, Paul, it depends on what kind of tax we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Consumption tax, for example, is actually a very regressive tax. Folks on the bottom income of the spectrum, as a proportion of their income or lack thereof, they are paying quite a few taxes. But to your point, in totality, the lower quintile of the income spectrum is definitely benefiting more from welfare transfers than taxation. Something to keep in mind is that the tax code is over 10 million words. That means that this favors those who know the tax code, who can pay folks to get around the tax code. On average, Americans pay about $300 to $400 per household to file their taxes and spend about 6 to 12 hours per season. Now, if you are a high income earner, if you are a business, that is going to be many-fold greater than that in time and money. But something to keep in mind with how our tax code is set up is what I like to call bootleggers and Baptists, a coin that was, or a term that was coined by Bruce Yindle, the economist. And he noticed that in various counties that were trying to ban the sale of alcohol on Sundays, they had two groups always showing up. These were the bootleggers, who wanted alcohol sales to be banned so that they would make more money, and the Baptists, who by principle wanted no alcohol sales on Sunday. So they saw that these otherwise two divergent groups of people who probably don't have a lot in common did have a lot in common on this. This is a lot of how our tax system is structured.